Finding missing coordinates. A missing coordinate essentially means just that. You've been given part of it. You have not been given all of it. That means you've either been given the x or the y and the other piece is missing. In order to find a missing coordinate, you have to have the equation that it comes from. So what we're essentially going to look at is how would you use the idea behind solving an equation or checking a solution to find a missing coordinate point. Well, it's as simple. We are using the idea out of that method, which is substitution. So we are going to take our ordered pair and we're going to substitute what we know. Well, that means not only are we substituting a number, but we are substituting the variable. So you have to know which variable is missing out of your coordinate pair. So here I have an equation and I'm given the point 0 something. Well, what you have to remember is that all coordinate points are written in the form x, comma, y. So if you're somebody who needs notes while you do math, I would highly suggest you write the basics up at the top, because that's going to help you identify which is missing. So if we look at this first one here, I have a 0, which means I have the x, but I don't have the y. So for this first one, I am missing the y value. So I'm going to input what I know into this equation. The only thing I know is that x equals 0. So here this becomes 0 minus a 2y equals 2. And what you have to do is we now just simply have to solve for y. So the 0 drops away. I need to divide the negative 2 over. So y is going to equal negative 1. And therefore, in order to correctly state your end solution, you have to write the coordinate point the way that it belongs. So the answer here is the point 0, negative 1. And this is what we're looking for. Let's try it again. Here I have 4 question mark. So that says again that we're looking for the y value, and it also says here that x is 4. Notice I'm using the same equation, so this is now going to be 4 minus 2y equals 2. I'm going to take this 4 and I'm going to move it to the other side. Since it's a positive 4, to move it says I have to subtract. Therefore, this becomes negative 2y is equal to 2 minus 4 is a negative 2. Divide everything by negative 2 and we get that y equals 1. Therefore, the coordinate point that we're working with is the point 4, 1. And this was our result. Now, last but not least, in this case I have question mark 3, which tells us what we're looking for is x. It also tells us that y is 3. So we're going to come back to our equation here and we're going to write it a little differently. Here it's going to be x minus 2 times 3 is still equal to 2. And in this case we need to solve for x. 2 times 3 is 6, so this is going to be x minus 6 equals 2. I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it. Because it is negative, to move it says I have to add. So therefore x is equal to 8. That being said, this coordinate point here would be the point 8. Let's make that legible. 8, 3. And here is what I was looking for. Alright, let's do it a couple more times. And notice here I'm going to change my equation. So it's very important to pay attention to the equation that you're using. So again, if we look at this first one, notice it's 0 comma something. So this is my y, and it also tells us that x equals 0. So we're going to plug that in. So this becomes 2 times 0 plus 5y is equal to 6. This goes away, So I'm left with that 5y equals 6. So y equals 6 over 5, which means I have the coordinate point 0, 6/5, and here's my first result. Let's look again. Here we're missing the y value, but we are told that x equals 1/2. So again, we need to plug it in. So we're going to have 2 times 1/2 plus the 5y is equal to 6. 2 times 1/2 is 1 plus my 5y equals 6. I'm going to take this 1 here and I'm going to move it. Because it's positive, I have to subtract. So this gives me that 5y is equal to 5. Divide everything by 5 and we get that y is 1. Therefore, the coordinate point that we have is going to be the point 1/2, 1. And here is our result. Last but not least, I have the point something 2. So this is my x. It also tells me that y is 2. So here again I'm going to use my equation, but in this time I'm going to plug in for y. So this becomes 2x plus 5 times 2 is equal to 6. So here what we're looking for is we have that 2x plus 10 is equal to 6. I'm going to take this 10 and move it. Because it's positive, to move it says that I have to subtract. So this becomes 2x is equal to 6 minus 10 is a -4. Divide everything by 2 and x is a -2, which means that this coordinate point here is going to be the point -2, 2, and thus I found my solution. Now that is just one such way of finding missing coordinates. The other way has to do with setting up a table. So this is table format. Table format gives you the equation and it sets it up in what's called an XY chart. And it only, again, as you can see, gives you part of it. And so you then have to be able to graph or calculate the points that are missing and then put it into your graph. So we're going to go ahead and start here. So I'm telling you that x is 0. So I have to find my y value. So to find the y value says that I'm going to take my equation, so 3/2. You know what, I'm going to put it outside of the table so you can see it a little better. So I'm going to take my 3/2 and I'm going to multiply it by 0 and subtract 1. In doing the math, 3/2 times 0 is 0, so this is going to equal -1. So therefore -1 goes in, and if you notice, this is essentially your coordinate point. So the first point that we are looking at here is we are looking at the point 0, 1. Now let's look at the second one, and notice here I'm missing my x, but I have my y. So with that, I have to put it in. So notice here's my y. So this is going to be 2 is equal to my 3/2 x minus 1. So when I'm looking at that, one of the things that I can do is I can take this and move it. Because it's being subtracted, to move it says I add. So 2 plus 1 gives me 3 is equal to 3/2 x. I need to multiply my whole thing here by 2, which gets rid of my denominator. So 3 times 2 is going to give me 6, and that leaves me with 3x. Divide everything by 3 and we end up with 2 equals x. So this is a 2. It means my second coordinate point here is going to be at the point 2, 2. Now we got to do it again. So here my y is missing. So we have that y is going to be 3/2 times negative 2 minus 1. 2 over 2 cancel out. Apply the negative, and this is a negative 3 minus 1. Negative 3 minus 1 is a negative 4, so that's what goes in here, thus making my next coordinate point the point negative 2, negative 4. And then last but not least, I have this 5/2 piece. So this is my y, so negative 5/2 is equal to my 3/2 x minus 1. Here the first thing I would do is multiply everything by 2. So it gets rid of my 2 on the bottom, leaves behind just the negative 5. Gets rid of my 2 here and leaves behind the 3x. And then negative 1 and 2 is a negative 2. I'm going to take this and I need to move it. So negative 5 plus 2 is going to give me a negative 3. Divide everything by 3 and we end up with negative 1 equaling x. So I get a negative 1 here, which gives me the final coordinate point of negative 1, negative 5/2. So now I need to graph it. So I'm going to start with my top point, and I'm at the point 0, 1. So I'm not going to move left or right any, but I'm going to go up 1, and here's my first point. I then have my second point, which is the point 2, 2. So I'm going to move to the right 2, 1, 2, and I'm going to go positive up 1, 2. Here's the second point. I then have, that's why it looks so weird. I wrote this wrong, it's negative 1. So here the point should have been 0, negative 1. So instead, again, we're not going left or right any, but we're going to go down 1, and your point should be right here. So I apologize for that. That's why pencil is your friend. Alright, our third point, let's see if I can do this one right. We're at the point negative 2, negative 1. So here we've got 1, 2 in the negative direction, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 down. Now what you should be noticing is that all these points are lining up. And that's because this is a linear line. So it would make sense that the last point here should line up as well, where we are at the point negative 1, and then 5/2 is 1, 2 1/2, which puts it right about here. So if you were to take a ruler and line up, you should be able to hit all of your points, thus creating your linear line. Now obviously, if you don't have a ruler, you would just simply play connect the dots and make it as close as you can. Now the last thing that you usually do is you would label your line by saying that this is y equals your 3/2 x minus 1. Alright, now let's do it again. And so here I have 5x minus 2y equals 10. And again, I've only given a few of the points and some of them are missing. So we're going to go ahead and we need to get started. So in the first one here, we are told that x is 0. So this becomes 5 times 0 minus a 2y equals 10. 5 times 0 goes away, so minus a 2y is equal to 10. Divide everything by 2, and y is a negative 5. Over in this next one, we're told that y is 0, so here I have 5x minus 2 times 0 equals 10. 2 times 0 goes away, so 5x equals 10, or x equals 2. Next, we're told x is -1, so here we have 5 times a -1 minus my 2y equals 10. So -5 minus my 2y equals 10. I need to move this. Since it's negative, I need to add. So my -2y is equal to 15. Divide everything by 2, and y is equal to -15 over 2. And then last, I'm told that y is 5. So again, we're going to have 5 times x minus 2 times my 5 equals 10. So 5x minus 10 equals 10. 5x equals 20. So x equals 4. And now we can graph. Now, one thing to note about linear is you only need 2 points to graph linear. So you could pick your 2 favorite points to use. I would use these top 2. And then once you graph your points and connect it, you can use, say, the other 2 to make sure that you did it correctly. So first I have the point 0, 5. So I'm not shifting left or right any, but I'm going to go down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the next one I have the point 2, 0. So I'm going to go positive 2, 1, 2, but I'm not going up and down any. And so this would go ahead and be what I would do. So I would connect my dots here and draw my straight line. And so this is what I'm hoping is going to be my line. And now if you notice, I have the point 4, 5. So I can use that as a checker point. So a checker point is essentially another point that you have that's going to verify if you did it right. So I'm going to go positive 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to go positive 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, puts me right here, and notice that does fall on my line. Therefore, I graphed this correctly, so the last thing that I would do is label it, which is 5x minus 2y equals 10. So in a nutshell, that's everything that you need to know in order to find the missing coordinate point, whether you are just given the coordinate points and the equation, or whether you're given a table form and asked to graph. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, remember to relax, to smile, have fun with your math, enjoy yourself, and I'll see you next time.